what is modern pentathlon and how does it connect to horse racing? Going to answer that question today on Maryland Racing Today, powered by the Racing Biz and presented by the Maryland Jockey Club. I'm Frank Vespe for Maryland Racing Today. Maryland Racing Today, part of the Midlantic Racing Today family of podcasts. On today's show, we're going to have Suzanne Stettinius, trainer based at Laurel, based on the farm, modern pentathlete, former Olympian. Interesting story here, really cool backstory. So we'll be talking with Suzanne Stettinius in a moment. Coming up later in the program, John Piassek, Mackenzie Pfeiffer are going to join me. We're going to go over some of the things that happened at Laurel this past weekend, including, of course, the Preakness Stakes. And then we will look ahead with the weekend to come. This is Maryland Racing Today. Thanks for watching and listening, and let's get the show on the road. Happy to be joined here by Suzanne Stettinius, trainer, modern pentathlete, former jumps rider, and kind of all-around athlete. Suzanne, thanks for joining me here on Maryland Racing Today. Modern pentathlete. Tell us.
It's a very different sport: fencing, swimming, horseback riding, running, shooting. A little bit of everything. If you know about the pony club world, that's where I was introduced to the sport. They had a sport called tetrathlon in pony club, which is everything but the fencing. So it's really, I would say tetrathlon was the reason I stayed in pony club, because I loved it so much. And then we discovered pentathlon through that. So we got a little bit more into it through there.
Mm-hmm. Now, so as I understand it, modern pentathlon was developed to sort of mimic as a sport the skills that a 19th century soldier would need. Is that accurate?
Yeah, it was a military test before it became an Olympic sport. Mm-hmm. And it's if your horse dies, you have to be able to run. If your gun runs out of ammo, you have to use your sword. And if you come to a river, you have to be able to cross it. That's kind of how the sport was developed. And it became an Olympic sport in 1912. Mm-hmm. So it's been around for a long time. Women weren't allowed to compete until 2000, which is unbelievable. But for a long time, it was a military only event. So you could only compete if you were in the military. Mm-hmm. So, and you'll still see now, a lot of the, not so much European countries, but I know a lot of the Argentine competitors were military, and you still see a lot of people being pulled from the military competing. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And most are not from a horse background either. They find a lot of runners, swimmers, and they try to if they're brave enough, they slap them on a horse and teach them how to jump a course.
So now the horse thing is interesting too, right? Because it's not your horse. It's like a random horse they choose for you. Is that right?
Yeah, you draw a horse out of a hat and you have to jump. You have 20 minutes to warm it up, and then you jump around a course. Mm-hmm. Which could be a max of 4 feet. They've changed it now, though. There's been a lot of drama with horses, people complaining about the horses, and they've taken it out of the Olympics. They've taken it out of the sport, and now they're doing a Ninja Warrior course instead of the horses. I was long gone from the sport before that began, so I don't know enough about it to talk about it, but I do know horses are out of the competition now.
Okay.
And they're fair. They every horse that's in the competition, they do school the course and they make a list, and these horses have passed, these horses haven't. And if you choose to not ride the horse you drew, you can take one of the reserve horses that didn't go clean around the course, but that's up to you.
Okay. Now you competed in the 2012 Olympics in London. What was that experience like?
I think the biggest experience was getting there. I made the World Cup team in, I think it was senior year of high school.
Oh, wow.
And which was 2006. And I tried for the 2008 team. And so it's just traveling the world, competing everywhere, being able to represent the U.S. all over the world. I didn't make 2008, and I decided to go back to college. I joined a swim team and tried again for 2012, and just got myself back on the World Cup team and competed all over the place to qualify for the Olympics. But walking in the opening ceremony of the Olympics was I don't even know how to describe it. It was an amazing experience. It's just so many people. It took us about an hour to get there, walking behind all these countries, and then you get to roll in. My teammate and I like linked arms in the front so that my parents, everybody could see us on TV, and not let anybody by. So it was cool. Just knowing everybody was at home watching me, and they've all supported me all the way through it. So
yeah. Did your horse background, did you feel like that gave you an advantage in that part of the competition?
yes, because I was able to focus more on the sports that I struggled with. These people that were coming in not knowing how to ride, they had to spend a lot of time to ride. I mean, London especially, they had really nice horses, so it was a solid 4-foot course. They had, and these people that come from backgrounds of not horses, they had to focus so much on training riding, and I could do that more focused on shooting and fencing, other skill sports. So I think that's where it helped me the most. Leading up to London, there was a lot of places that didn't have the nicest horses, and the courses were small, and everybody was just getting clean rounds because the horses were just kind of getting around the course, and it was easy. So those times you're like, oh crap, like I'm not going to be moving up in the riding. But when you had big solid fences, you knew that you were able to move up in the ride knowing how to ride. So for sure. I mean, there were some scary falls in London.
Is that right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Well, 4 foot is a serious jump.
Yeah, and like there was one individual that she went through the triple. She fell off on the first one, was underneath the horse's neck on the second one, and went through the third one. The horse jumped. The horse didn't touch anything.
She touched everything, though.
She touched all of them.
Now, you also rode in the Hunt Cup a couple times, is that right?
Yeah, before I went to the Olympics, I started riding some jump racing. I started with Joe Davies actually, and not very successfully, but I love the sport. I grew up pony club, fox hunting, pony racing, and I always dreamed of riding in the Hunt Cup one day. So I started racing in like 2009. I started riding jump races, and I rode in the Manor Grand National. Never made it to the Hunt Cup, in a lot of point to points. And then I broke what did I break first? My neck in 2009. Yeah. And that was it was a big eye opener. I'm like, oh, it's pretty tough to be an athlete and risking my bones in horse racing. So I kind of backed away from it again. 2011, I got too much of an itch being back in Maryland and training, and I was full-time training on the college swim team and on the World Cup team trying to qualify for 2011. And I rode in something called the team chase for horses. And you go around a race with 3 people on your team. And my horse flipped over a round bale and I broke my collarbone. And that's 2011 before the 2012 games. And I was number 1 on the team and definitely most likely going. And that's when I was like, I gotta stop. So I got that surgically put back together and somehow made a big bounce back. You can run with a bad shoulder. The swimming is a little bit difficult to bring your arm around with a broken collarbone.
Yeah, I'd imagine. I'd also imagine even though you could run, it might cause some pain.
Yeah, when they put it back together, I was able to run again because they put a pin in it. But swimming, it set me way back in the swimming. And as I was actually headed to Italy 2 weeks after that, and I had to call the U.S. Olympic Committee and let them know I wasn't going to go. They were a little pissed, but I did bounce back. I made it to China. I think maybe I'd say 2 months after that injury, and we got a silver medal there. So
wow, that's
still a bounce back.
So,
but I did. But it was 2013 after the Olympics. I was like, I'm riding in the Hunt Cup, and I made it happen. So.
So you really you had a hard time learning that lesson.
Yeah, I was like, I just want to ride it once, and then of course I rode it the next year, and neither time did I make it around, so I was done.
Then you learned the lesson.
Yeah, then I did.
Okay. Because I'm led to understand you're pretty competitive, so it seems like you're always looking for outlets for that competitive urge.
Yeah, instead of training myself, I just train horses now. Let them do the competing.
Does that
I wasn't the best on competition day either. I was that nervous filly in the paddock. So
okay. You were the
I
one
was,
getting a little hotter on the neck.
I always ran my race before the race. Hmm.
Does that completely scratch the itch or no?
It helps a lot. I've tried to do some like local 5Ks and triathlons, but my body doesn't hold up as well as it used to, and so it's nice to be able to stay fit on my own and train horses and have the competition. And man, have the horses humbled me. I don't get as nervous for races now because I'm like, oh, I can get dead last. It's just might happen. So
Right.
it's nice going. The first few years of training, it was difficult because I would get so worked up for every single race, thinking everybody's expecting so much of me. But now I'm like, oh, whatever happens, happens. If I
Right.
win, that's amazing. But there's a very good chance I'm not going to.
It's it's a very good chance for just about everybody. Was there like a moment that you said, kind of, wait a minute, I'm getting myself all worked up and I need to calm down, or was it like a process?
I think it was more like, what do you mean for the horses or me competing?
Yeah. Well,
I think it was just more the repetition. When I started training, I had one horse, and there was a lot of pressure every single time that horse ran.
mhm,
Then I kind of built up and got more and more horses, and it was just kind of a more consistent pattern of running races, and you just kind of get used to it. Even this year, though, because I'm primarily turf and I take the winter off. So
right.
even my first race this year, I was like, but now I feel like I've calmed down. I've calmed down a bit going into every race now. So I think it's just you can't get worked up like that when you're running that many races every weekend.
Right, right. But it's like one of the things, like you have a smaller stable, and a smaller stable can be prone, if you don't have the best horses, maybe they're out of conditions, whatever, and you only have a smaller group, you can run into those for kind of streaks. Does that get, and you've been pretty steady, like around 15, 16% in your career, but does that get frustrating when you go through those?
It does,
The
especially I know last year I was on like the biggest hot streak of my life,
Right.
and then I think I went 3 weekends without hitting the board. And when you lose, my percentage goes down so dramatically. It's
Right.
like, wow, because I don't have a stable of 100 horses. I have a stable of 19 horses. So when I don't win a race for a weekend, my percentage all of a sudden plummets. Um, I don't focus too much on the percentage. I'm not trying to bring in a bunch of owners. I focus a lot on just building, the career for these horses, putting them in the right place, and hopefully we can win their race.
Hmm.
I have a lot of really cool up and coming young horses, and I just try to do right by them instead of trying to freak out about my percentage. So now, if I'm on a roll, I love it, but
Right.
I'm not checking all the time to see where I am.
Hmm. Hmm. On, I think it was May 8th, you had class photo in the last sip go kind of fight it out to the wire and finish 1-2. Um, that's a pretty cool moment. And did you prefer one over the other, or were you going to be good either way?
Well, I own class photo, so that wasn't too shabby. Uh, in an ideal situation, he would have been the second place, and then I could have that waiver 12-5 again. It's good.
Hmm.
You're all about like, okay, you win that. Now where do we go? And
Right.
it's a tough game because it's moving those horses up. Now we're in tougher company. It'd be nice to let them have two softer spots off the layoff.
Hmm. Hmm.
But he's entered back at Fair Hill. But he's the AE, I think. It's I couldn't have asked for a better result than that. Can't. I mean, when the last tip came flying, I was like, oh, it's going to be them. It's going to be them. It's always kind of a result you dream of, and there it was.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't love that I outnosed my owner, but his horse ran a fantastic race, and we can't ask for much more than that. So
That's Richie Blue's horse, right?
yes, yeah, and I've ridden that horse since he was a 2-year-old, and I know the horse well, and I love that horse, and he tries hard every time, and he didn't have a great season last year, so it was nice to see him come back.
Hmm. Hmm. Do you think getting on the horses, is that helpful to you in terms of how you train?
Yeah, absolutely. And I try to make sure I have riders now because I have enough that I'm not riding 20 horses a day.
Right.
And I definitely try to rotate through to make sure I get on everybody because I love to know going into a race, I'm like, they feel better than they've ever felt. We're ready to run.
Mm-hmm.
And I've had some, I'm like, I'm not entering this horse yet. So
Mm-hmm.
it's
Mm-hmm.
nice to feel because you don't really know the horse. You don't know how they usually feel. You're like, yeah, they're good.
Mm-hmm.
They feel fine. But
Right.
I like it. It also keeps me fit.
Yeah, for sure.
I don't have to go to the gym in the afternoons when we're finished.
That's one
You
problem
you
solved.
laugh, you laugh, but I went to the gym every day all winter. Now I'm like, I think I need to stop my membership.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, and you've got kids, right? So you've got things that you got to juggle. So
Yeah.
it's helpful to knock two
And
birds
my
out
my
with one
son's
stone.
my son's into the pony racing too. So the 4:30 afternoon pony race practice is after horse training.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. In case you didn't get enough horses in the
Yeah.
morning. Huh? Now, one of the things I thought was interesting, I was reading an article about you that your horses aren't just at the track. You kind of rotate them farm track, farm track. Talk about that and what you think that does for them.
Yeah, so my cousin's Ann Merriman, which she's the one that, maybe dragged me into all of this.
It's her fault. We'll blame Ann.
It's 100% her fault. And, I start the horses back in probably end of January after the layoff, and we start them with the farm, long rides, lots of hills, building them up before we start coming to the racetrack for some speed work. Um, I find it so nice for them to be able to go out and run and buck and play in the field, and then come back to the racetrack for like discipline. After they run, I love to take them home and let them have a few weeks at the farm. We also ride them at the farm. It's not like they go and they're sitting in a field. We
Mm-hmm.
split up, we divide and conquer, me and the riders. If I either cover the farm and they cover the racetrack or vice versa. As a runner, I think it's so good to, alternate those long, easy rides with hills and also put some speed work in different days and just kind of mix it up and keep your legs strong in every way. And let
Mm-hmm.
it's important to let your body recover. And so they don't recover any better than they do at the farm.
Mm-hmm.
Now you do risk them running around the field, ripping shoes off, kicking each other, getting hurt. That is the risk, and it happens too often. And that's why I get along well with Richie. And I've had a couple of his horses that he thought wouldn't do well just living at the track 24/7 every single day.
Mm-hmm.
The Imaginings, especially, they're very high, intense, nutty little horses, I would say. And they do really well having some turnout and getting to gallop hills and do stuff here.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, and it sounds like what you're saying too is, in addition of it being a kind of cross training, it's good for their minds.
Yeah. Yeah, and especially after they run, they're like, okay, little reset, go back to. And what I've done is like I've gotten horses all sharp, ready to run, jumping out of their skin, and the race comes off the turf. And I'm like, they're just gonna go home. We have to do a little reset. I can't keep them in here for another 3 weeks for the next one. They're just
Okay.
too sharp.
Mm-hmm.
And I mentioned Anne because a lot of the horses are at her farm, and we train together. We work together at her farm as well because a lot of them are her homebreds that I train.
Mm-hmm. Do you? So it sounds like you've got obviously some like Richie's homebreds and some Ann homebreds. I know you've claimed a few, and it sounds like even when you claim, you're looking for turf horses, which probably, they're probably makes you a little unusual in a place like Laurel. I think probably most people who claim horses are looking for dirt.
Yeah, the way I train, it's a little easier on them. You don't have to have them quite as fit to run on the turf. I think
Mm-hmm.
soundness is more key than fitness. The turf, if they're a true turf horse, the turf is going to carry them along. So you kind of focus on getting a horse ready to run, getting him sharp, keeping him sound, keeping him happy, and they'll show up on the turf. I can't talk too much to the dirt racing because I obviously don't have much experience in training dirt horses, but I feel like you have to be a little harder on them. You got to push them a little harder. You got to put more miles in them, and they have to be so much fitter to get through that dirt. And I so far have not been very successful at it in my few starts. I've had a couple winners, but they're at the bottom and
Mm-hmm.
um, and off turf. So I've had a couple that have done okay off turf, but you
Mm-hmm.
know, And I'm not gonna lie, I love the winters off. uh, so you guys can all go out there and ride when it's 5 degrees. I'll be at home in bed, spending mornings with my kids and doing stuff. It's nice to have those 3 months at home with the kids and having a little bit time. And the horses love it. I pull their shoes, they get a vacation, and they do really well and come back with it.
Yeah, well, as a prominent local example, that's what King Leatherbury did with Ben's Cat for years. Give him the winter off, bring him back in March, get ready to run in April.
It's a pain in the ass. I start him back in February, and it sucks. You're like, well, I had this horse so fit, and I have to start all over. Just like, okay, we're going to do a week of just trail rides, another week of hills, and then we're just like, wow, I had him winning races, and now we're blowing walking up a hill. So it's...
Do they go back that much in their fitness that you're really starting?
And when they're out in the field, they're running around a lot. They do okay.
Yeah.
It's hard. You got to try not to let them get too fat, but
right.
They do okay. There's a couple of them that do better than others, but they tell you when they're ready to kick on.
Yep. Now, earlier this year, you had a holdout you put in the Henry S. Clark. He had won an A other than, goes off 94-1, runs an absolutely gigantic race to be fourth against a pretty good group, including Cruise the Nile. How are you feeling after that? What was the thought process that led you to put the horse in there?
It was obviously a big step up. We were like, well, why not nominate? Let's just see where he is. And he did really well with his layoff, and he actually came back and ran in 2 point-to-points before that over jumps. So I knew the fitness was there. It's so early in the season, like maybe this is the time to sneak into a stake race when maybe people aren't quite ready. And this is a horse that's already had 2 races in him, in the point-to-point league. The nomination came out. Yes, it was daunting, but he didn't look to me that he was that terrible. And I was like, you want to go? Let's do it. Let's give it a shot. Maybe we can get a piece of this. When the entries came out and they had him at 30-1, I was a bit confused. I thought more like 12-1 there. There's some horses in there that we've been right with that were 6-1, and I didn't know why that. And when the numbers kept going up, I was like, fine, he doesn't see the scoreboard. Let's just see what he can do with this. Right. And he ran a huge race. Forrest ran great, tucking him in, saving as much as she can, and I don't think she pulled up to the half pole. He just kept going.
He was like, I'm not done yet. Let's keep going.
Yeah, and then after that, I was like, well, now we still have the 2-time. Let's go back for that. And he ran a huge race on Black Eyed Susan Day as well.
Yeah, he was third in there, beat like a length and a little bit. So is the plan with him, like kind of knock down that 2X?
Yeah, I would say the 2-time for him. Let's see if I can convince Meriwether to not run him over jumps. I hope she watches this and hears me say that.
You can send it to her.
Yeah. He's a really big, cool, strong horse. And he loves that flat mile. He has enough speed that he can just kind of sit right up there and he'll just keep going. And as you know, like the turf at Laurel holds speed. So if he can just sit close enough, hopefully we can knock that one out of the park. If we can find one not on Black Eyed Susan Day, would be ideal.
Yeah, you usually end up with somebody who's a little different from the horses you were hoping to see in those allowances over that weekend.
The 2 that beat us, I think we beat in the stake, we come up against Naptown a lot. We ran against him at Colonial, and then he beat us in somewhere. We're back and forth a lot with Naptown.
So in the barn these days, you have some 2-year-olds coming along?
I have 1 2-year-old that's training now, and I have a couple that were up in Delaware being broken, and they'll be coming into training with Laurel soon. So yeah, we have a couple good little group of up and comers. So not too much to talk about quite yet, but we'll work on getting closer. Hopefully we can get a 2-year-old racing them. Richie Blue thinks is going to be a dirt horse, but he did hire a turf trainer, so we'll see.
You can always try him on turf one time and see what happens, right?
I tried that with one of those this year. I think we're going back to dirt, but.
So your 1 stakes win to date, I think, Maryland Million Turf Starter stake with Be Determined back in 2021. It's a nice day to get your first stakes one.
Yeah, that was fun. I mean, I don't really realize that was considered a stake as a starter, but we'll take it. That was a fun day, and my whole family was there. And that was pretty early on in my training career too. What was that, 2021?
21, yep.
Yeah, I mean, he's a really cool horse. I bought him thinking I was going to make him a jumper, but then I got a little bit more into the flat racing and decided to bring him back as a turf horse, and he was really cool. I actually still have him. We retired him and kept him. So
he was running in the last year, wasn't he?
Yeah, he ran last year. He's retired this year.
Are you doing anything with him, or is he hanging out?
He was just a jumper show last week.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, he's kept him around. He's been fox hunting. He's been doing everything. So. Yep. Yeah, he was really good to us. I think he won the Maryland bred allowance. He won an open allowance. He won that race. He always showed up. He was our biggest. He would surprise us every time. Sometimes in a good way, sometimes in a bad way.
Yeah, another horse you had, was it Parks? Is he the one that ran third in the Laurel Futurity?
Yes, he was third there. So I broke him myself. There was one day at Pimlico, because last year they let us train at Pimlico for a little bit. I think he dropped me 4 times that morning. So I called up Ann. I was like, I think I need help. So we sent him to Maryland, and they put a good 2 weeks at him, and then we cut him and we brought him back into training, and he just started to kind of put things together and start doing everything right. And I decided if he pulls us into a race, let's just run him as a 2-year-old. And he just
you were possibly just thinking we're going to kind of leg him up, but then wait till he's 3, maybe.
Yeah, let him tell us what he wants to do. And he did everything right in training. We just kind of itched him on, and he got better and better. And it was actually Ann pushed it. She was like, "Why don't you just run him in a 5.5 furlong turf? You have fit enough. Let's just do it." So I was like, "Okay, we might be a breeze or 2 short, but he's fit. He can handle it." Well, he won. We always knew that he would definitely prefer to go long, but we're like, okay, well, now what? So we were like, let's just run him in the stake, and he showed up big there too. So, he's a really cool trying horse, and not much more to say about that. First off, we did try him once on the dirt. That was a mistake.
Well, it's funny. I was looking at his results like in Equibase, and they have the little Equibase speed figure next to it, and it's like his speed figures are like 75, 80, 85, 78, 0, 75, 85. So kind of sense which one was the dirt try.
In the morning he trains like he could handle the dirt so well. And actually the jockey is Mirio's the one that said it to me. He's like, "This is a dirt horse. He's so strong, so strong." And Ann said to me, she's like, "Suzanne, I trained the mom and the grandmother, and they train like $1 million in the morning. They cannot run on the dirt in the afternoon, but who am I to listen?" And ran him anyway, and it did not go well. I think the turf race didn't go, so we just went ahead for the dirt race and gave it a try. So it's it's tough as a 2-year-old allowance. Those 2-year-old allowance races on the turf, it's tough to fill.
Yeah.
You got to have enough 2-year-olds that have broken their maiden.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. Like I was talking to, I think Jerry Robb and John Salzman won the first 2 baby races at Laurel on the dirt. And it's kind of like, okay, now we're one of 4 horses on the East Coast that broke their maiden at 2. Now what do we do?
Exactly. And that's like, I was like, well, we got to get him to go. Maybe he can show he can do something on the dirt, and opens up a whole new set of condition books. But he did not. But he came right back and was second. It didn't cave his head in, which is good. He came right back and was second in an allowance race. So he showed he still had his moxie.
Yeah, no, that's good. Now,
he ran huge on Black Eyed Susan Day as well. Like we came way wide, and he came running. So.
Is it? Were you pointing at? Were you hoping to have horses compete on that weekend, or is it just sort of the way the conditions fell?
No, I mean, like Boss of the Power ran that weekend. That race came up as an extra for the Thursday before, and then it came back again. I was like, oh, that's not going to go a 20 claimer. That's not going to go on Black Eyed Susan, but it did.
Yeah.
No, there definitely was no me setting up to run on that day. That's just how the condition book laid out. So.
You've got three entered. I guess you said one's an A at Fair Hill this weekend. Were you, when Fair Hill became a thing, were you hoping to, I mean, it's kind of speaking your language, right? Turf horses,
Yeah.
including one that's, I think, a mile and 3/16.
Yeah, Sip's in that race. I mean, I think the last Sip will really love that distance. And it's, I don't know the turf course very well. I did ride there a million years ago, but I've never been on the new turf course. And
Okay.
I know there's a little bit of a hill and there's sharper turns. So, hopefully these farm boys handle it really well. I think it's a fun change of scenery. It's cool to be in Maryland, but at a new track. So I'm excited. Hopefully this rain is wrong and it holds off and we all get to give it a go and maybe it can happen more often.
Yeah, my suspicion is if it goes well, you'll see more of it in the years to come. I think, because among other things, the move to Pimlico, it's a narrower turf course. You're not going to be able to run as much turf as they do at Laurel. So,
Right.
Gonna have to find ways to plug that gap.
Not going to be great for me.
Yeah, less turf's not going to really help your cause, is it?
No. Yeah, we'll see what happens. I mean, yep. And it's going to be tough having to, we're training at Laurel and then going back to Pimlico. It's going to be a different world.
Yeah. No, times are going to change. I mean, will you, what am I trying to ask you? If once they go back to Pimlico, presumably, as we just talked about, there's going to be less turf. Will you at that point start looking at dirt horses or?
I mean, I'm never against looking at dirt horses. And if I get a horse I think is all dirt pedigree and handles the dirt fine, I will run on the dirt. I just have always primarily looked at turf horses and breeds turf horses. Richie thinks he breeds dirt horses, but they look more like turf horses to me as well. He does have a couple 3-year-olds I'm training now that are definitely dirt horses. So I feel like he sees this happening and he's trying to move more towards that because he's always been more prone to turf horses as well. And he's trying to, I mean, it's a frustrating game too. I mean, this weekend I have 7 horses entered and it looks like we're going to have a long off turf weekend. So that's, a couple of them haven't gotten to run yet this year. So it's a frustrating game. And I was telling him, I was like, it's kind of nice. These maidens I'm running on the 30th. It doesn't matter if it rains, we can still run. I'm not used to that. I'm used to just refreshing my weather app all the time, wondering what's going to happen.
Yeah. So like all these horses you have in this weekend, if they come off the turf, have they all already demonstrated to you that they're not going to do dirt?
I have one in on Saturday. Yeah, he's not on Saturday, and he was second off turf already, and I know he can handle it okay. If I know that the problem is it's so early in the season. If they don't handle it okay, I don't want to beat them up, and they're in turf shoes, and it's kind of tough to do to them so early on. If it was October, I'd be like, go ahead, run.
Sure.
You're getting turned out for the year. And see if you can get a piece of it. But, early on, I'll run the ones that handle it and maybe have a chance out there and not get their head caved in. I'll go for it.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you though, do you feel like, if you, with some of these horses, if you run them on the dirt and it's their first time on the dirt and they don't run well, you feel like that sets you back then in terms of going forward?
Not always. I mean, look at Parks. He ran.
Right.
He almost got hit by the ambulance in his dirt race, and then came back and was second in an allowance race on the grass. I mean, some of them can have them, and that's what I'm saying. Like some of them, I don't think have the moxie to go back and forth. So, and a lot of these ones that I'm planning on running the dirt, I do a lot of the breezes that I make them get dirt in their face. They've experienced it. Some of these turf horses, they get that dirt and they're like, I've never been covered in dirt before. I just think, if I have a horse that's, total front end runner and he's either going to hold on to it or not, I think why not give it a go, see if he can do it.
Yeah.
I definitely think a horse that's primarily turf, it's a little tougher on him when it's a long race on the dirt. Sprinting is a little bit easier to give it a try. Just one turn on the dirt instead of making him go 2 turns on the dirt. But I don't know. It just depends. And also looking at if you look at the form and there's 5 MTOs in there that are going to rock your world. But if they all look about to be crappy dirt horses, you might as well give it a go.
Right. No, that's fair too.
You,
all right.
You can see every time when I go to scratch, I'm like, okay, well, let me look to see what the dirt form looks like and see if I have any shot in the world. So.
Right. All right. Good stuff. Suzanne Stettinius, Olympic athlete, trainer, Maryland Hunt Cup rider. Thank you very much for joining me here on Maryland Racing Today. Yeah. We appreciate it.
Thanks. I'll talk to you soon. Thanks.
You're listening to Maryland Racing Today, powered by the Racing Biz.
Joined here by Maryland Jockey Club on-air analyst Mackenzie Pfeiffer and John Piassek, who handicaps the Maryland for the Racing Biz, theracingbiz.com. Lady, gentlemen, hello. Mac, saw your smiling face all over the TV Preakness weekend. How'd Preakness weekend treat you?
Were you tired of me?
I'm looking at you again, so apparently not.
I think it was too soon to rescind the invite here, though, so I'm giving you the chance. Maybe next week I'll be kicked out. No, Preakness was great. Really, really fun to have very good handicapping cards to go along with it. I mean, we always have good racing in Maryland, but to handicap those cards, I really enjoyed it, and I was pretty excited to see how things unfolded. As we mentioned off air, really good local horses, but all in all, 2 fantastic days, and the weather worked out beautifully.
John, you were up at Yonkers rather than down at Laurel, which was its own different thing. But how'd it look? How'd it look from your vantage point?
I was saying all week, the vibes weren't bad. They were just kind of different because I'm so used, obviously, to having my mindset shift to it being in Baltimore at Pimlico, and having it at Laurel was a bit strange, but it was a great weekend. As Mackenzie said, weather was perfect. Cards are fantastic. And obviously the pools were much bigger than usual, which makes for much better betting opportunities. There were many pick 5 chances both Friday and Saturday. And I thought handle in particular on Saturday was better than I expected, at least. I was figuring there'd be a downtick just because, it was not a star-packed Preakness field, and I thought just having it not be at Pimlico would have pressed handle a bit, but it was $106 million over 14 races. Last year it was $110 million. So all things being equal, it was a great weekend. Buys were solid, and as you mentioned, a lot of great efforts, especially by local horses, which is always great to see.
Yeah, for sure. Let's talk about the Preakness itself. Your guys' impressions. Napoleon Solo gets the money. Iron Honor finishes second. Chip Honcho third. The 2 sort of most prominent Derby horses, Ocelli, Incredible, no real impact. Mac, what was your takeaway?
So it's funny. Chip Honcho, Iron Honor, horses who early on in the week I felt like I had to use, and I was sort of conflicted. By the end of the week, I just kind of resigned and said, you know what, I want to use 2 shorter prices, 2 bigger prices, and I'm just going to look away from them. So that was, maybe don't second guess things, right? Hindsight's always 20/20, but Napoleon Solo was one who I think you're bringing up first because he was yours, and
he finished first. What could I do?
Yeah, I'll let you talk about him, but to me, I didn't expect that trip from him. I was genuinely impressed, and I think coming out of that, he could go ahead and have a big year. So sort of excited to see him return to things here.
Yeah, he's looking. They're looking at the Haskell as their next sort of major target. His trainer said, and the owner Al Gold is from New Jersey, so that makes a ton of sense for them. John, what was your takeaway?
Well, I was saying, I think Taj Mahal and Napoleon Solo ran pretty much the opposite races I thought they would. I thought that Napoleon Solo was kind of cheap speed, that he would go to the front and just stop, and that Taj Mahal would sit on or near the pace and kick away. And as it turns out, that ended up not happening. Taj Mahal set very fast fractions. Napoleon Solo got the trip, and he held off Iron Honor for the win. And we talked about this a bit off air if the track was biased towards speed or not. And my initial impression is probably not, but I think it's worth noting that all day long, there were a bunch of very talented closers who really did not make an impact from off the pace at all. And that includes the Preakness, where both Oselli and Incredible, who made big late runs in the Derby, really didn't have much of a late impact at all in the Preakness, despite that fast early pace. They finished 4th and 5th, respectively. So again, you don't want to jump to conclusions, but I do think it's something worth keeping in mind. And we talked about all week, talk about how wide open a Preakness this was. Taj Mahal made some history. He was the highest priced Preakness favorite ever at 4.7 to 1, breaking an over 100-year-old record.
I did not know that. That's an interesting thing. I expected him to get bet. He had a big last outing. The figure was competitive. The local horse, the irresistible angles, potential of first women to win the Derby and Preakness. Because there were a lot of reasons you expected him to get bet. In my opinion, I'm curious for you guys. There's no universe where he should have been the favorite in that race, except apparently the one we lived.
I don't think so.
I completely agree. He was one who I had to use in some of those sequences, but I was hoping for a different trip from him, and it's hard to do that from the rail. So just went a little too quick, too early. But I don't knock him, and I do think he can improve off of it.
Yeah, I wouldn't think at all we've heard the last of him. He's obviously a horse with a lot of talent. It's funny though, because John, you were saying you thought they'd get different trips. A big issue that I had as a betting matter with Taj Mahal was I couldn't work out a trip for him from the rail. Like I just felt like either he was going to have to run and gun, and I didn't think he was fast enough to succeed at doing that because they weren't going to let him walk like they did in the Tessio, or he was going to get buried under, behind 4 horses. And I just couldn't see. In my head, I couldn't work out a trip. As Mackenzie alluded to, I was touting Napoleon Solo all week, so dropping a few F-bombs in the lane. And I think that was the difference. I think my F-bombs really helped him hold off Iron Honor in the lane there.
Well,
Paco heard you.
One of my superstitions.
Paco needs the help, right?
One of my superstitions is if I'm watching a race live, I will cheer for my horse. But if I'm watching a replay, I won't. I'll just watch it in silence. Mm-hmm. Because I'm like, well, if I'm cheering for the horse live, maybe somewhere like some positive vibes will reach them. Whereas if it's a replay, I know it's already happened, so nothing I do can impact it at all. So it's fine.
Yeah. But I do think, unless I agree with John what you said regarding the speed bias. I felt like Friday's track was dead fair. We'll talk about Peach Tie in a minute, but I felt like you could win from anywhere on Friday. Winners generally came from the forward part of the race Saturday on the main track, but I'm not inclined to think, absent additional evidence, that was a true speed bias. I mean, I really felt like the way the Preakness played out, the best horse on Saturday won. Mm-hmm. He went fast early. He ran Taj Mahal into submission. Iron Honor had the length of the stretch to get by, couldn't. In fact, really couldn't make much of an impact. I mean, I don't think you could take anything away from Napoleon Solo's performance. I don't know that he wants another inch of ground, but you make a lot of money winning races like the Haskell and the Whitney at 1 1/8 miles.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And back to your point about his owner won the Haskell 4 years ago with Cyberknife, who I think has a very similar profile as Napoleon Solo, as a type of horse who can make a lot of money going 1 mile, 1 1/8 miles. And while Cyberknife did okay at 1 1/4 miles, he placed in the Travers. It wasn't quite his game. So I think as long as Napoleon Solo followed a similar blueprint, he could have some more success this year and beyond.
So I have to ask, because John loves his future bets, for your future bet for Napoleon Solo, where does he go?
Well, I know his people had talked about going to the Haskell with Iron Honor. I mean, it depends on who else shows up in the race, but I think he'd be very livened though. I mean, if I got my imaginary Haskell future book and I get 4-1 on him, I think that would be fair, especially since it'd be much lower than 4-1 on race day, I figure.
I think, Mac, though, you were asking a different question, weren't you? You were asking,
where's he going next?
No,
I mean,
in the Breeders' Cup, does he go Classic or Dirt Mile? I think that's
unless he wins out going into the Breeders' Cup, I think he'll go Dirt Mile.
Yep. I agree. That's where I'd like to see him.
All right. Yeah, I think that probably is the best fit for him myself. So I agree with you guys. All right, let's do this. Top weekend performers. John, your top 3. Go.
So my happiest performance was Big Cuddle because I love seeing the locals beat the big out-of-towners on the big stage. I mean, Big Cuddle, Gary Capuano and Yedzie Hazelwood, very big fish in a smaller pond, beat the Judmont Horse Final Story in the Sir Barton. That was very cool. I thought the best pure effort was Navajo Warrior, who won the Pimlico Special in Gate 2 Hour style for Flavian Pratt and Safi Joseph, set the pace, led all the way, ran the distance much faster than the Preakness horses ran the distance one day later. So I think he's one to keep an eye on for the rest of the year. And my other star, besides the Preakness, goes to Coach Missoula in the Hilltop, who defeated Ultimate Love in that one's first start off the bench. Coach Missoula, who had beaten older horses last time out, set the pace, ran a game race, held on over Ultimate Love by a head. I think both of the top 2 could go on to have big seasons.
What say you, Mac?
I agree. So I wrote down 3 for each day because
okay.
So
if it's
Friday,
worth doing, it's worth overdoing. Atta girl.
So Friday, Peach Tie, Miss Preakness. That was a very, very, very nice filly that she got the better of. And I'm a huge Peach Tie fan. You guys have heard me bandwagon her all along. Cut back in distance, huge advantage for her. And my gosh, you just have to respect an honest, hard-trying horse. So to me, great to see. She did it at a price too, so I can't complain for my exacta. McLean's Rook, Pimlico Special. I know we talked about the winner before, but McLean's Rook comes out of a very good second dam, who was a multiple grade 1 winner, I believe, going long on the dirt. And the way he ran that race on paper, he had a huge step up. But I thought it was great to see Esmerio get a chance on that sort of stage as well. And it really goes to show, I think it's a horse who, I haven't heard this from the connections, but sort of knowing the horse a little bit, he's one who I think is going to end up really stepping up in the season. So definitely one to watch. Glaze Over, No More Calls, horse who I think is actually pretty nice, took the nightcap on Friday, but solid group to go ahead and step up. Big Cuddle, I agree with you, so I won't really dive in too much, but that trip was a lot of work for him, and I really loved the effort, so going a little longer. And Bring the Smoke, started in Maryland, came back to Maryland, huge price, and really impressive on the day. And Chasing Liberty in the turf sprint. So that one had the toughest trip, I thought, of those ones coming back from the King Leatherberry. And to me, he made a lot of sense and thought he'd be overlooked. He wasn't a huge price, but really a fair opportunity in there.
I mean, Irad gave just a phenomenal ride in that race. He saved all the ground, came up the rail, and beat Outlaw Kid, who raced wide by a nose, as you mentioned, turning the tables from the King Leatherberry. And, that's why Irad's the best.
It was funny. It was a true flip the trip for both of them. I mean,
yes.
One was on the outside, like everything. But that was kind of where I wondered, could that happen? And it did. Yeah,
no, it was exactly the flip. The outside became the inside, vice versa, got up narrowly. Jean Valjean, a little bit of a disappointment in that race, who I actually had singled in a pick 5 that had already gone up in flames, but went to the front, didn't really stay on.
He got a little bit warm. I think the buzz, third start off the bench, he's really fit now. I don't hold it against him. It's just a big day, and I think it was maybe a horse who, by the time they got in the gate, he had just gotten a little bit warm.
The horse that I want out of this weekend that you guys haven't mentioned is Obliteration, who was, I thought, ultra impressive in winning the Chick Lang. Just swallowed up Shane's Wonder, who was on the lead. Won just very easily. Had run in the Saudi Derby in his most recent start, which is a race that, among others, Bookham Dano ran in a couple of years ago. So I thought he was very impressive. And the Asmussen barn always comes loaded when they come to Maryland on Preakness weekend. I was about to say Pimlico, and that's one I think we want to keep an eye on. Now, you guys alluded to this. Let's talk about the locals, because it was a really good weekend for local connections to run well. You mentioned Peach Tie, Coach Missoula, McLean's Rook. Graham Motion had a couple winners with Turf Star and Warming. Shane's Wonder, you mentioned, ran well for Freddie Velasquez, based at Parks. Big Cuddle, Striker has Dial. Also, I thought Jumping the Gun and the Black Eyed Susan, who ran second for Andy Simoff, ran a great race. Just talk about the locals a little bit.
Well, sort of putting Shane's Wonder and Obliteration, one of the best 2-year-olds last year, and no surprise we saw him come back to me. He very much was the horse to beat. And so I completely agree with you there. But the effort we saw from Shane's Wonder, that is a very, very fast horse. And I don't think it knocks him at all having missed out in that race. I think he certainly belongs on that kind of stage. And, fun to see him step up, take a shot, and, hold his own in there.
Yeah, actually, we just had a story on the racingbiz.com about Shane's Wonder right before that race. And they put him in the digital sale, but they set the top bid of the digital sale was 380 or 385, and they had set the reserve at like 390. So he didn't sell. So they bought him back. It didn't sell. So they bought him back. So obviously they like him a little bit. And if Freddie Velasquez had told the owners, it's the Uptown Charlie Brown people, they said, like, how good is this horse? He's like, this is the best horse you've ever had. And it looks like he might be. What about you, John? What about the locals?
I mean, as I mentioned, Big Cuddle was my favorite local, especially considering he beat Judmont for his final story in the Sir Barton. And, I knew Big Cuddle had a lot of ability. I think we all did when we saw him win the Maryland Million Nursery. But he was getting a big ass in the Sir Barton. He had not been around 2 turns before. He actually hadn't even been beyond 6 furlongs. And it was just his second start of his sophomore season. But he answered all of the questions very emphatically. So I'm very excited to see what he does next. Knowing how Gary rolls, I could see him going in the Delaware Derby next time out on June 13th. And then he might be a dark horse Haskell candidate too. So we'll have to see what he does. But he's a horse who I think could make a lot of noise, both this year and maybe even down the road. We'll see.
That seems right to me, because that horse that he beat, the Brad Cox horse, is supposed to be a legitimate racehorse. And,
yeah, a lot of steam this week.
And maybe it'll turn out he isn't, or maybe it'll turn out he is, and Big Cuddle's a real deal.
Absolutely. I mean, as we said, it was only Big Cuddle's 5th start. I feel like he got kind of lost in the shuffle over the winter because he had that big win in the nursery, and then he didn't show up in any of the road the Preakness races. He was sidelined most of the winter, and so we ended up talking about a lot of other Gator Capuano horses, and Big Cuddle got kind of lost in the shuffle. But you know what? He may end up being the best yet of that Capuano powerhouse.
To add on to that, I've always thought he was the best one. It was just a matter of kind of getting him back to the races. But I want to point out that horses with that level of class and ability overcome the things that he did. And so we saw it in both of those first 2 career starts. Maybe he doesn't really want to sprint. Maybe that's not his game. But, that type of horse really stands out to you. And he had every reason to kind of finish second in the Sir Barton this past weekend. I thought you could make enough excuses. Very good horse in there. He didn't have the easiest of trips. Did a little bit much sort of early middle of the race, and then came back and just finished up, found another gear, and that's kind of what you like to see from the real deal types.
The Gary Cap barn is just, it's incredible. They get all these horses that are, for the most part, kind of modestly bred, local breeding, and they just win and win and win. It's amazing. Yeah. All right, let's talk about one other thing. Fair Hill. We got Fair Hill races this weekend. This is like the Mackenzie Pfeiffer special here. We got 2 days of Fair Hill. We got flats on Sunday, weather permitting, of course. Flats on Sunday on the turf, then jumps on Monday, Memorial Day, whatever day that is, Memorial Day, Monday. Mac, you excited for Fair Hill?
I am. And, it's a very different setting. And I think it'll be great to kind of showcase some of the stories. It also opens up an opportunity for horses who maybe are just kind of missing, on the traditional configurations. I like that we have different distances for the Sunday card as well. 1 3/16, 6.5, kind of sets things up. And I think it could move horses forward. There might be horses who, you see as an odds-on winner based on the form, but I don't think it's necessarily going to be as straightforward as that.
It's funny you say that, because I think a lot of the people in Maryland racing are sort of hoping to turn Fair Hill into kind of a Kentucky Downs-ish course. And Kentucky Downs is sort of notorious for horses that run well at Kentucky Downs and then come to a regular track and are terrible.
Right. And I don't necessarily think that you're going to find that in every race. But there are horses who I think are going to be worth watching as who could really have a good opportunity to sort of put the pieces together, take a big step forward. And, maybe it gives them different ideas on what to do with the horse going forward as well. But nonetheless, really exciting to get out there and have a little change of scenery.
There's one sort of traditional maiden special way. Every other race is run under starter conditions because I think they don't want to schlep the racing office up there to take claims, which is exactly what they used to do when they used to run in Atlantic City. Every race was run under starter conditions in those last few years at Atlantic City. So, John, what does this do as a handicapper? Does this is this a different sort of challenge between the course and the conditions?
Well, to your point about Ducky Downs, I'm always kind of wary about playing there because it is so unique compared to other tracks. I really don't know how transferable form is compared to other tracks, so I do kind of tend to steer clear. But we don't really know how Fair Hill is going to play out because it's been so long since we had actual racing there. I know there was meet there for several years, but this is the first time it's been done in a while, and the first time I think it's been simulcasted out to other places. So right now I'm just handicapping it as I would a normal grass race, and then make adjustments as I have to based on what I see that day. And then for next year, if I determine that Fair Hill form really isn't transferable from other tracks, kind of go with that and maybe take some of those races inside and out with a grain of salt. I'm very curious, by the way, to see how these races get bet because as I mentioned, they are being simulcasted out. And on one hand, the Fair Hill brand doesn't have that much cachet to people outside of Mid-Atlantic. People know it if they know it at all as a training center. On the other hand, it's all grass. People love grass. It's big fields. It's competitive fields. So I'm interested to see how they do handle-wise. I think it'll be okay.
Yeah, the smallest field is 8. 8 races Sunday. Smallest field prior to scratches is 8. So hopefully all those hold together and you get some nice you got a phone call here. Some nice fields and some good betting. Go ahead.
It's funny. I like the transfer where it's a unique track. You just have to figure it out. I think that's where you find prices, and I sort of like
the mystery of it.
So I lean into Kentucky Downs. But I don't necessarily. But my follow-up to that is, I don't think Fair Hill is going to be quite as unique as Kentucky Downs as far as, we don't necessarily have the same hill and, that kind of setting. But, the surface is a little bit different. So, you can maybe approach it from horses who don't mind a slight variation in the surface. Things like that, good to keep in mind. Perhaps it's going off of, the end of turf season last year. We used the turf a lot. So maybe horses who were able to handle sort of later season turf course. That could be an angle that I'll start to pay attention to.
Well, there's a pretty good likelihood, unless for some reason these races end up going completely sideways, which I do not expect. There's every reason to think we're going to see a lot more of Fairhill in the years to come, because when we move to Pimlico, they will not be able to run the 5 or 6 turf races a day that Laurel does, because the course is too narrow and you're going to be on, one course each day rather than 2 as you are at Laurel. So I think Fairhill is likely to play a larger role in flat racing in Maryland in the years to come if things go according to plan.
Which I think is a net positive because, I always enjoy going to those steeplechase meets in Maryland. It has a very different vibe than the average day at the track, but it makes for a very fun experience. So I'm kind of hoping Fairhill kind of bridges those two worlds. And I think the more of those kind of days as you have, more of those kind of days that we have, as you said, the better.
All right. So Fairhill is Sunday flat races, Monday jumps, post time?
1 o'clock.
1 o'clock post. Okay. So a little bit later than the usual Laurel, which is at noon. So you could sleep in, have a little brunch, get yourself over to Fairhill and play those races. John will have picks and analysis for those. And Mackenzie, are you going to be up there, Mac?
I will be up there. Now, John, I'm wondering, are you doing a pick 5 for the jump races, or are you just going to play some doubles in the exactas?
I'm only doing the flats because, first of all, I'm going away this weekend, and also because I like watching steeplechasing, but it's really like throwing darts for me. So I'm just going to be like, oh, I've heard of that horse before, and play them in a pick 5 and kind of hope for the best.
Okay. Well, I am going to be there, and I'm going to try to talk to people, especially early on in the cards, to get a feel for how the course is riding. So worth tuning into the show and get some feedback from people who are out there.
There's also a jump stakes I might add on Monday. It's the Valentine Memorial Field of 12 going 2.25 miles. Morning line favorite 2 past 8 at 3-1. So that looks like a particularly interesting betting race.
It is.
Anything coming up Friday, Saturday that you guys want to talk about when we have just regular old Laurel Park racing?
I think the most interesting horse of the day is in the 7th race on Saturday. And this is barring, these races coming off the grass, which is a possibility. Hopefully the weather pans out. But I'm really interested in number 8, Creed's Vision. Race 7, of course, is a first level allowance, 5.5 furlongs on the grass. Creed's Vision has been in great form on dirt. He broke his maiden impressively at Tampa Bay Downs back in February, hit the board against some very tough fields in his last 2 starts. He was second last time to the white hot Paco, the Taco Man. And if his form transfers over to grass, he's going to win that race. I just have no idea if it will. I mean, I know Delacourt is very well first time on grass. He's 27%. He has a whiff of grass ability in his pedigree, but nothing that dramatically pops out. So he's a big question mark, but he's really going to be a difference, not just in that race, but in that entire late pick 5 sequence. I think he's the key. And right now, I don't know, but it's possible. So that to me is the most intriguing race of the weekend.
I have to agree. I do think it's a really intriguing race. Now, to build on that, how about race number 6? Now, also a fun handicapping race, but Mopo, I am a huge fan of, and I wasn't necessarily worried about her sprinting last time out. I just thought maybe I'd give her a race, but she had a huge gallop out. She's as versatile as they come. I kind of like getting her back here.
I mean, I was skeptical of Mopo last time out because she just hadn't won in a really long time. but she did get the job done. We had a huge race first off the long layoff, and as you said, galloped out fantastically. So I think she'll take a big step forward. Second off the bench. Number 3, Soaring Angel, I think is an interesting wild card in here. I did not pick her in my top 4. I really didn't like her last race on dirt at all, but she did. She showed a hint of ability on grass in California, makes her second local start. Brittany Russell adds blinkers, has a ton of grass pedigree. Would not be a shock at all if she took a big step forward here.
And I believe she's a half to Sea Dancer.
Yes.
At Sea Dancer and Johannes. So I remembered seeing her on the dirt. Sea Dancer kind of surprised me on the dirt, and I gave her a chance, and I just said, all right, back to the grass we go. So she gets back to it. I might just try to use those 2 in there.
Last thing I wanted to ask you guys about, it just this slipped my mind and it just came back to me when you mentioned Paco the Taco Man, which has nothing to do with Paco the Taco Man. Paco Lopez rode Napoleon Solo. He manages to get Jockey of the Week from the Jockeys Guild for winning his first Triple Crown race, which is always nice. And then also to come into PETA's crosshairs, PETA claims that he broke the whip rules, not by too many strikes, but by raising his hand above his helmet before striking the horse with the riding crop, which is a violation of the rules that HISA has promulgated. John, ridiculous nonsense or a legitimate issue?
I think PETA are deeply unserious people, and I would not take what they say too seriously. And I also don't like how they're kind of overstepping their boundaries. I mean, if HISA and the Maryland Racing Commission had a problem with it, they could handle it on their own terms. I think PETA inserting themselves in this does nobody any favors. And I mean, if the MRC and HISA do a legitimate investigation and they find there was a violation, then that's one thing. But I don't think PETA has any business trying to tell people in racing who know much better how they should police the rules.
Mac?
I have to agree with you. I think, that's maybe a appropriate question to raise, but is it really, are they just trying to look for something is sort of where I wonder.
Well, of course they are. I mean, they're calling for him to give back his entire earnings from the purse and to be banished from the sport. So
yes,
I think they may be just fishing around for a little PR, which they're going to get.
Hopefully, of course, for them, though.
They're good at getting a little PR. And of course, Paco, in fairness, has an extraordinarily checkered record when it comes to whip violations. He's got a bunch of them.
That's the thing. It is a hard thing where the people on the other side of the debate are so unpleasant that I have to go to bat for Paco Lopez. That is a hard thing. But PETA fits that bill.
Now, it's sort of interesting because of the timing in which it came out. It's not like it was a question flagged immediately, right? How many times did we have to go watch the replay to find something to argue about?
Right. That's the other thing.
Yeah.
I think news broke on Monday morning that they were, maybe even Monday afternoon, they were going to try to do something. If it's blatantly obvious, that's one thing. And that's kind of the attitude I take towards fouls and violations, both in racing and in other sports. If it's not a blatantly obvious mistake, then it's probably not worth investigating too deeply.
But isn't that the nature? I mean, these whip rules, it's never blatantly, almost never blatantly obvious. It was one thing when Paco hit the horse in the face after the finish line. That was blatantly obvious. If you were watching in real time, you said, ooh, that's bad. You shouldn't do that. But they get people for having 7, 8, 9, 10 strikes of the whip, and that to determine that you got to go back and watch replays to see if they really did it. This over the head, it happened so fast. That's sort of the nature of this specific species of foul, is it not?
Yes, but I still it is such an obscure comment, and it's not something we really hear of, that you wonder, how hard did you have to look to find it? That's kind of what I come back to, is just sort of, how hard did you work to come up with that, and how offensive is it in the grand scheme of things?
Yeah. No, it is interesting. I mean, because a lot of these rules, like particularly the crop rules in general, a lot of that is for public consumption, because it's unpleasant to watch somebody wailing on a horse, even if, they'll all tell you these things are basically like hitting them with Nerf bats at this point. If you go back and watch races from 15, 20 years ago where there were no limits, it's a little jarring to see some of these horses getting wailed on. And so even if I think my point here is a lot of this is for public consumption and not so much necessarily the well-being of the horse.
Right. I would have to agree with you there. But do you, on the other side, do you think the public notices when your arm comes up slightly?
I would say no. I went back and watched the replay when I got the press release. It's hard. I mean, it's hard because, when he raises his hand, and it's really hard to know, did he go over his head? Is he right at the side? Because it all happens in, a heartbeat.
I'll say also, going back to what you were saying about PETA, being attention seeking, and Paco having sort of a checkered record. I wonder if they're targeting this specifically because it's Paco and he is kind of a firebrand and kind of a polarizing figure in the industry. If it was Flavian Pratt doing that on Iron Honor, I don't know if they'd be coming at him this hard.
I completely agree.
Yeah, or Johnny V. People who are sort of universally well respected.
All weekend long, and I know Johnny V had a good weekend, but all weekend long it was like, John Velasquez is like a god emperor of riding, and I'm like, he cost me a lot of money last Preakness weekend. So
Let's focus here.
It's really important. All those plaques. Well, now it's actually not even a plaque anymore. It's all digital.
Yeah. Screw you and your Hall of Fame career, pal. You cost me the pick 5. All right. She is Mackenzie Pfeiffer, on-air analyst for the Maryland Jockey Club. He is John Piassek, Maryland racing analyst for the Racing Biz, theracingbiz.com. And I am Frank Vespe of theracingbiz.com. Thanks so much for joining us on Maryland Racing Today, powered by the Racing Biz and presented by our friends at the Maryland Jockey Club. We'll catch you next week on Maryland Racing Today, but you can also follow our sister podcast, Delaware Park Today, launches this week, and we have a new episode of Charlestown Races Today, both coming a little bit later this week. So follow Midlantic Racing Today wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks so much for listening. We'll catch you soon.